And what is it we supposed to be doing?
Being kind to one another.
Sinners is a 2025 movie about a juke joint in 1932 Mississippi that's beset on by a group of vampires, and the humans inside need to survive until dawn. Now, this movie feels to me like the equivalent of a married couple that are together because of convenience or kids. I'm very curious how the idea of this movie came about, because I felt like this movie wanted to be, and perhaps should have been, just a straight character drama about twin brothers in 1932 who stole money from the Chicago mob in order to open a nightclub in their hometown. But character dramas don't get people in the movies anymore. So someone had the idea to just put vampires in it. I mean, people go see vampire movies, let's put them together. And that's how this movie felt to me. It's a 2-hour and 17-minute vampire movie where the least interesting part and the most shallow and undercooked part is the vampires. They basically don't really come into play until the last third of the film, and when they do, it seems like they had no idea what to do with them, and so it resolves itself so quickly and uninspired that I just don't get why they were added in the first place. Now, I don't know Ryan Coogler's history with horror movies. I mean, I think he's an excellent director, but the cynical approach is horror movies are doing well right now, and someone said he should make one, and so he smashed together zombies and vampires into a character drama that he wanted to make about a 1932 juke joint, and then just kind of went all in with it. The non-cynical approach is he just doesn't understand horror movies and did the best he could with the limited knowledge he had, and so focused on the horror elements as little as possible just to consider it a horror. But I would prefer to think that he did all of this just because he was inexperienced in the genre. He clearly has something to say about musicians during a horrible time in our country's past, and how they affected our history of music despite being relegated to the background that they actually were. The problem is he tried to use a horror element that felt just tacked onto the story, and that would have had more depth if it was played without it. So in the end, he shortchanges both aspects. The movie centers on twin brothers, Smoke and Stack, who come back to their hometown after several years away in Chicago with a bag full of money and want to start a juke joint. It's been a dream of theirs, and they spare no expense at getting who and what they want for the grand opening. Now, this is the start of the shadow of a problem that continues through this movie, and that is the weird and false sense of urgency. When they first get to town, they are adamant on getting it up and running that day. They buy the building, they get it ready, they hire everyone, and get it going for that night, which seems like a lot. Now, this also hints at the way they got the money for this venture, which is never specifically outlined, but it does hint that they stole it from some nefarious folks in the Chicago mob. So in that sense, I thought this was a one-time bash that they wanted to do for their hometown, just some blaze of glory kind of thing. But we learn later that they're trying to build a successful business. Now, I don't know about you, but I think overpaying and rushing things to open doesn't feel like the best business strategy. I mean, that storyline of the stolen money, along with most of the storylines in this movie, just kind of evaporates anyway. And it makes an almost 2.5-hour movie feel very light on details. Like, for instance, how long were the brothers away from their hometown? It says many times they were gone for 8 years, but they also are mentioned as soldiers from war. So which war was that? I mean, World War I ended 14 years earlier, not 8. So I don't know what war they fought in. But the lightness of details comes up no more so than with the vampires themselves. Now, most of the runtime of this movie plays like a period character drama, as all the different characters get some screen time in order to develop them as people. Now, that is a good thing, and I was enjoying it as we spend some decent amount of time with the different people involved in the evening's events. However, the story has no idea what to do with the vampires once they actually arrive, which might explain why we spend a good chunk of this movie before they do. I'm still not even sure if they're vampires. Like, they're first labeled as hates, but then they're switched to vampires. I mean, it's mentioned that vampires are individuals and not part of a group vulnerability, but that doesn't really hold up either. Then there's the speed and quickness that each person turns, which takes about the length of a bathroom trip. Now, I'm not a stickler for lore, but this all just feels very rushed in order to keep it within the time frame of one night. with how quickly they turn and lose all humanity, it would seemingly be setting up the ability to infiltrate the humans very easily. But they don't really seem to do that at all. Just the one time with Mary, who was the previous girlfriend from one of the brothers. But after they realize that they're actually vampires, that doesn't really work anymore. And that's when the movie just completely runs out of ideas, and the whole thing breaks down into kind of a laughable melee scene, which seems right out of the third act of a Marvel playbook, when you have no idea how to end something. So I'm going to say spoilers here, mainly because there's just not a lot to talk about in this movie that hasn't already been shown in the trailer anyway. But I will say they're mild spoilers for the most part, but they are, I guess, technically spoilers. So if you don't want to hear this, just skip ahead to the summation at the end. Now, understandably, he has been in the Marvel world for a while. And so when the question comes up of, well, how do you resolve a third act? Well, you gotta have a giant melee, right? That's what you gotta do. Why not? Even though size and scale always works against horror movies in so many ways. Now, I think of a movie like Tales from the Crypt, Demon Knight, which, along with From Dusk Till Dawn, this movie seemed to borrow a lot from. But with Demon Knight, it was also a group of people trapped in a single location with a barrier up to protect them, and they have to stay alive through the course of the night. And a main bad guy and his minions trying to get in. Now, the way that movie works is the demon preys on each person individually and tries to seduce them with whatever their character's weakness may be. Like one guy, it was booze. One person is just the power to be heard. It's a well-done way to try and settle a standoff situation where you are a demon and you can't get to your prey directly. Now, with the length of time that this movie spent on getting to know this group of people, why they didn't do something like that here is kind of confusing. Like, the movie spent a lot of time getting to know the strengths and weaknesses of the main players, and yet it never really uses that information to any sort of advantage. Once the discovery of the vampires and there becomes that standoff between the people in the building and out of the building, it could have been a really interesting progression if each person was tested by being seduced by what they may think they ultimately want. But none of that happens. The stalemate this movie backs itself into, of the vampires and humans on different sides of this building, gets broken in what I thought was the most ridiculous way, where the character of Grace just gets frustrated, I guess, and invites them all in order to fight them. And speaking of vampires themselves, even they were a bit inconsistent. Like, the main antagonist, Remick, first says he needs the young musician Sammy in order to bring his boss back, seeing as though he possesses the skills to blur the line between the worlds, which is what's told to us in the prologue of the movie. But then at the end, he just decides he wants to kill Sammy and just take his songs, which, if he could do that, then why didn't they just focus their attention on him during the melee and just kill him? Like, why all of this other stuff? Now, I get the point of the movie, like, I get the allegory of the white man that corrupted and offered the devil's deal to so many black and minorities in order to own and take advantage and appropriate their talent of black music. But it felt like that's all this was. Like, once you got the allegory, there was nothing really left that was interesting to discover. I think I would have preferred to have a more straight drama about this, which they clearly sacrificed in order to have the vampires. For instance, there's a sequence that happens towards the end of the movie where a bunch of KKK members show up out of nowhere for a giant firefight at the juke joint. Now, even if that was just to show off Michael B. Jordan firing an old machine gun, which it kind of felt like that's what it was since he made no real effort to avoid any bullets, but why the KKK? They really weren't involved in this story at all. It would have made much more sense if that was the Chicago crime bosses that had tracked him down to his hometown because he stole money. I mean, the KKK just felt like wish fulfillment. Or okay, if you want to have the KKK, how about this? The Chicago crime bosses join forces with the KKK and they all attack. At least that had some connection with the story. And let's not even talk about the very end scene where the vampire brother shows up to offer Sammy a deal with the devil. Now, this is another place where I don't think even the filmmakers knew what the vampires were and why it felt all tacked on. I mean, if anyone gets turned, they immediately lose all of themselves and just serve whatever evil force that turned them. And if that's the case, why did the brother keep his word during the last fight? Why did he lament that the last sunrise was when he last saw his brother for the final time? I mean, if he misses his brother, has the capability to miss his brother, then he wouldn't have tried to kill them so easily and quickly in the first place. If you want to have a creature that gets turned like a switch, you can't then have them care later on. Anyway, this whole movie felt like the mainstream version of a mediocre vampire movie. I mean, Coogler is a great director, and this looked really good. It was shot really well. The performances are fantastic, and there is some nice gore and sequences in it. But overall, I found it to be kind of lackluster as a horror/vampire movie. But I am glad that there is an original horror movie that is doing well in the theaters. I'd give this movie a C+, but let me know what you think.